So, Mike, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Very excited to be here, a guest on your new podcast.
Excellent, good to hear. So, to begin with, can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yes, I'm the Teacher Engagement Manager here at Macmillan Education. So I'm part of the Teacher Professional Development team, and my job is all about training teachers and helping teachers develop.
Okay, and what did you do before you started at Macmillan?
Well, I used to work and live in Italy, in Milan, so I think I took a fairly typical route. I moved there many years ago as an EFL teacher. Thought I would stay there a year, maybe 2 years, and then I left at the end of last year after 15 years in Italy. So I worked as a teacher, then as Director of Studies, and for the last few years I was Director of a private language school in the centre of Milan.
Excellent, very interesting. And in those 15 years, starting as teacher and ending up as Director of Studies, how do you feel the role of teacher changed?
Well, there have been loads of changes in teaching. Perhaps one of the biggest changes that we saw in Milan was this, and I'm sure many of your listeners can agree with this, that we moved from being virtually 100% adult school to increasing numbers of kids every year, till it was, when I left, it was the majority of the students were young learners. So that was a considerable shift, especially as most teachers had done their initial training in teaching adults. I think technology has changed a lot. So when I first moved there, I was still taking the cassettes out the bag and carrying my cassette player around to various companies. And 15 years later, everybody had iPads. We were all hooked up to flat screen TVs. I think when I moved to Italy, the word podcast probably didn't even exist, and here I am being interviewed on a podcast, so lots have changed. Having said that, I'm not sure the role of teacher has fundamentally changed. I think the teacher is still there to help students learn. So some of the tools have changed, perhaps the makeup of the actual students have changed, but the job of teacher, I think, is fundamentally the same as it was 15 years ago.
Absolutely, so the role remains fundamentally the same. Recently in ELT, though, there's been a big debate about the origins of teachers, specifically native teachers versus non-natives, and I understand when you were in Italy, this was something you were involved in changing, in bringing forward. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so when I started teaching in Italy, it was a fairly big school, and I would say the vast majority of the English teachers were native teachers. Most of them, like myself, over from England, often on fairly short-term contracts. Perhaps they'd be there for a year, 2, 3 years. When I became Director of Studies, I made the decision to open up the recruitment procedure to non-natives as well as natives. I think the pressure previously had been the kind of sales and marketing pressure of saying to your students, we've got only native teachers. What I felt was the best thing for our school was that what we wanted to be saying is that we had the best teachers.
Not just teachers who spoke the language as a first language, but teachers who were qualified despite their origins.
Yeah, so all the teachers we took on were qualified, but I think we were missing out on a lot of talented teachers by focusing only on native teachers. There was a bit of resistance from the students when we first brought the non-native teachers through, but I have to say the feedback at the end of the courses was overwhelmingly positive, and perhaps later we can talk about why that might be and what some of the advantages are of a non-native teacher over a native teacher. I'm quite proud of the fact that when I left the school, it was probably a 50-50 % mix in the teachers' room of native and non-native teachers.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. I guess one thing would be that the students respect people who've gone through the same journey they're going through themselves, so they would understand the teachers who are teaching them who are from Italy, in your case, would have learnt English and would understand the difficulties and the problems that they would have.
Yes, I think that's true. I think they also respect the native teachers for other reasons, perhaps for the culture they bring into the classroom and maybe the life experiences. I think, looking at it for a second from the other point of view, I think the teacher is often better able to understand the struggles that the students are going through. On a very simple, fundamental level, especially with newly qualified teachers, they already understand the way the language works and the grammar because they've had to study it and learn it themselves.
Absolutely.
I remember, for example, when I qualified, the biggest challenge for me in the first 2 years was actually understanding the grammar that I was teaching. So I think there's a kind of an advantage that they might have in terms of knowledge. I also think there's an interesting career path of people who are non-natives. Often natives are going abroad to experience another culture. In my case, for the football and the pizza that was available in Italy at the time. But what we noticed with non-native teachers, it's been their lifelong passion to teach English. So perhaps from when they were kids, they wanted to teach this language. And I think you'll know, and your listeners will know, that having a really motivated, passionate teacher can make all the difference. I want to be clear, there are plenty of passionate native teachers as well, and I think that would be my conclusion. It's all about the quality of the teacher and their understanding of the students and their passion for the job, regardless of whether they're native or non-native.
Okay, let's move on and talk about the future of ELT. And if you could make one key change to the world of ELT from the perspective of either a Director of Studies or your current role, Teacher Engagement Manager, or even going back to when you were a teacher, looking forward, what change would you like to see take place in the world of ELT?
Wow, that's a big question. I think despite all of the technology that's coming, and we keep seeing articles about adaptive learning and the role of mobile technology in the classroom, I still think that the teacher is fundamental to the success of the language learning experience. So I would love to see in the future a shift in the perception of the role of the ELT teacher. I think perhaps in the past people have viewed it as a poor relation to real teaching, to teaching in state schools, secondary schools, universities, and I would love to imagine that in 10 years' time the world of ELT and ELT teaching is considered as highly as other branches of education, that teachers are treated very well, and I'm sure this will be done well with your listeners, but paid very well, and that the role of teacher has a much higher status.
Absolutely. I suppose the key question is how to bring about that change, whether it's through more immersive training, moving with the technology of the time, but looking at key issues like classroom management, learner management, planning, making sure qualified teachers are rigorously tested. So when they enter their careers, they're looked upon as proper teachers rather than kind of a fly-by-night stepping stone career, as it were.
I think this whole idea of continuous professional development is crucial to lifting the status of the EFL teacher. Sadly, in many realities, a teacher is hired, put into a classroom, and then they're never trained, never observed, left to their own devices for years. So I think
that causes standards to drop somewhat,
or stagnate, or I think if you're going to turn around to the wider world and say we are dedicated professionals, then they're going to be asking questions like, well, what do you do to keep learning? What do you do to keep developing?
Which is where we come in, of course, where you come in for sure.
Hopefully.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you very much for your time. And best of luck with teacher development.
Thank you. Good luck with the podcast.
Thank you very much.